In this video, we're going to be taking a look at Jotunnslayer Hordes of Hel. This is a game that has a demo currently on Steam that had caught my eye, so I checked it out and had a really good time playing it. If you're looking for something fast-paced with decent customizability and a lot of challenging content to try out, then you might want to check out this game, and we're going to be talking all about that in this video. Jotunnslayer's gameplay is what people would call bullet heaven. It's like Vampire Survivors in the sense that hordes of enemies will swarm your screen and will do everything they can to try and kill your character. You will of course have to fight these hordes off and survive. And as time goes by, the amount of enemies as well as what types of enemies there are will keep on increasing, making the game more challenging as the stage progresses. On top of all that, you'll need to accomplish a set of objectives to actually finish the stage while under a time limit. Now, I'm not exactly sure if the time limit is actually just there because of the demo or if it's actually part of the game's mechanics itself, and I don't know for sure if the stages are actually endless waves of enemies. However, I do think the time limit is deliberate because the only way to face the stage's final boss is to accomplish that stage's objectives, so it'll give you enough reason to actually do them instead of just grinding while running around the map. Once you finish all the objectives, you'll get an indication saying you can summon that stage's boss, and when you do manage to summon it, the timer will stop. I guess the game is considerate in the sense that you won't have to worry about time running out, and you'll just have to focus on not getting your ass thoroughly whipped while you whittle away at the final boss's health. And of course, since the stages get progressively harder, you'll get the chance to improve your characters by picking up some upgrades along the way. We'll get into that in a bit, but first let's start things off with character selection. You'll be able to choose between 4 classes before you start the stage, and only 2 of them are available in the demo. These 2 are the Berserker and the Seeress. I'll go into some detail about them in just a minute, but for now let's dissect how a regular gameplay session would start off. Other than what class you choose, you can also choose what weapon you will use. These weapons, despite being the same type of weapon, will have different bonuses, and it also looks like your weapon skill depends on what weapon you choose. Other than weapons, you will also be able to choose what stage you want to play in, with Niflheim being the only available stage for the demo. You will also get to choose modifiers, which usually make your gameplay easier or harder in exchange for something. For example, you could lessen your enemy's damage output by 30% in exchange for having 30% less resources you can receive, stuff like that. Lastly, you can also choose the stage's difficulty, where the enemies will get tougher and you'll get more objectives before you can summon the final boss, but in exchange, it allows you to unlock a lot of modifiers, weapons, and even game modes. With all that said, let's go into the classes that you can choose from. First up is the Berserker Class. Is it just me, or is there always a Berserker Class when it comes to Norse-related games? And they're almost always using axes as a weapon. I mean, Vikings also used other weapons like swords and bows, but it looks like they're mostly associated with axes. Anyway, the Berserker is one of the 2 classes you can choose from that isn't locked out in the demo. It's a melee-based class, so you'll have to get in close with enemies before you get to damage them, which is honestly a pain in the early parts of the stage, where enemies will be swarming you in pretty much all directions. Because of that, you'll notice you'll be using dash more often than you would with a Seeress, who has a ranged attack so you can reposition yourself without being swarmed. What's worse is that you can only attack those who are in front of you, and it kind of makes the early game a bit hard. One of the perks of choosing the Berserker, though, is that you gain access to the class trait Rage. Rage is a buff which is described as a heightened emotional state that unleashes the Berserker's full violent potential, providing a temporary boost to their capabilities. When you do a regular attack, there's a 10% chance to activate Rage for 4 seconds, during which the Berserker gains a 10% increase in movement speed, generates 3 HP per second, and deals 20% more damage. And since you'll be attacking a whole lot, you'll frequently be in rage mode, so you have that semi-constant regeneration, which is incredibly useful if you want to save up on food. Of the 2, this is my preferred class because it just makes things easier with its auto-healing. It also allows you to deal significant damage when you're under rage, plus it also allows you to move quicker than a Seeress would, which does help you accomplish objectives a bit faster. The only problem really is that you need to be so close to hit enemies, and when they are in range, you're also within range of their attacks, which makes boss fights a bit trickier. Its subclasses are Battle Master, which increases your overall damage by 30%, and this bonus actually doubles when you have the rage buff. Zealot, which lessens God skills, which I'll be talking about later, by 20%, and it also doubles in rage. And lastly, we have the Troll Scion, which increases your healing intake by 50% and increases your regeneration by 3 per second. This also gets doubled in rage. Moving on from the Berserker is the Seeress, which is some sort of staff-wielding class that deals ranged damage. This is the complete opposite of Berserker because it is less nimble, doesn't have HP regeneration, and starts out with less health compared to the Berserker. What's good about this class, though, is how you can be at a safe distance when attacking enemies, which means they normally won't be able to attack you without getting close, unless they can do ranged attacks. Because of that, early game is much easier. The Seeress class trait is Eldritch Wards, which triggers when you get damaged. It forms a shield around you, allowing you to be invulnerable for a second. It has 3 charges, and each charge takes about 35 seconds to cool down. The other bonus includes a 30% chance to get a bonus skill or reward when leveling up or finishing objectives, which is pretty great to have since 30% is actually pretty high, and you'll be leveling up a lot during your runs, so you'll have a lot of chances to trigger it. I noticed that with the Seeress class, I struggle far more against regular enemies compared to how I fare against bosses, despite the fact that it should be easier to deal with them than the Berserker. And the funny thing is, I actually struggled more with bosses than I do with mobs when using the Berserker. The lack of health regeneration is just a bit too hard for higher difficulty stages because you'll be relying on food more, which you often won't get enough of. The subclasses of the Seeress are Hag, which gives you a 25% damage increase, Soul Collector, which lets the soul crystals you collect damage your enemies, and Witch, which applies debilitating debuffs to your enemies. Next, I'll be talking about the skill upgrades you can get during stages. There are 2 kinds of skill upgrades. One is class skills, and the other is god skills. Class skills are upgrades that you can only get with the class that you have, and they're usually upgrades like faster attacking speed or more critical speed. They only usually affect your own normal attacks, stats, or weapon skills. On the other hand, god skills give you skills like generating chain lightning when you do a normal attack, or summoning some sort of corporeal titan to shoot lightning at your enemies, or generating some sort of pulsing field that damages your enemies and pushes them away. Class skills will obviously depend on what sort of class you are. A Berserker will only have Berserker Class skills and will obviously not be able to get Seeress skills. On the other hand, god skills are available for all classes. You can get Thor god skills, which are mostly lightning-based focused attacks, or Freya god skills, which are mostly sort of light-based AoE attacks that also allow you to regenerate. What's cool about choosing these skills is that you have several rerolls and banishes. Rerolls let you reroll what skill choices are available to you. So let's say if you end up with only Seeress and Freya options, but you are going for a build that mostly focuses on Thor god skills, then you can do a reroll to refresh your options and hope to end up with it. Banishes, on the other hand, are used on skills with really lame options. Like say you're aiming for certain Thor skills, but you almost always get the crit upgrade passive skill. You can use your banish to make sure it doesn't show up as an option anymore. I honestly think the game may be a bit too lenient with guiding you towards your preferred abilities, as you can almost always build your character up so it lets you have the exact skills that you want for your preferred playstyle, and it almost never feels very randomized. I've also been seeing some people get Loki god skill options when I watch some gameplay footage, but I can't figure out how to unlock those in the demo. Maybe you can unlock other god skills the more you progress in the game, I'm not entirely sure, but I think that's probably the case. Another aspect of Jotunnslayer Hordes of Hel are virtues. Virtues are pretty much bonuses you can apply to your character before you start your stage run. Think of them as passives that are purchasable using gold that you get from your runs, and they come with a variety of helpful effects that could potentially help you. It's definitely something to consider if you find yourself stuck and can't progress through difficult stages. And just like the skills, you can choose to invest your gold in god virtues, which are bonuses that are available to all classes, or class virtues that are only available to the corresponding class. I'd suggest investing in god virtues first if you haven't found a class for yourself. I spend most of my gold on Thor, Freya, and Berserker virtues because I use Berserker the most, but you can do whatever you like. I spent pretty much the entire afternoon and evening playing this game, and funnily enough, I only managed to finish the normal difficulty in no time during that time. Part of that is my fault though, because I didn't know about the virtues and what they added to your character, so once I started using them, I eventually ended up beating hard, which was the hardest difficulty of the demo. But wow, did it really take a whole lot of dying to figure out what sort of build I should be doing, as well as what skills I should be going for. The leap in difficulty between easy to normal was very significant, and the way the difficulty leapt from normal to hard was almost funny. I must say though, the designs of the game look amazing. The bone Jotun that kind of serves as the final boss of the Niflheim area looks very menacing and isn't something you could just cheese with range. And the bosses here are enemies that you can never outrun, because once you gain a significant amount of distance from them, they'll reappear near you and start whooping your butt again. If I do have any gripes about the game, it would be that I sometimes get performance dips from time to time, especially when there are huge waves of enemies on the screen. I guess it's alright for now since it's just a demo, but I do wish they'd optimize it for the final release in January. I think they will, because this has been pointed out by several players and the devs are the type to listen to feedback. They've also mentioned that they're considering multiplayer co-op for the game, but right now they're focused on making sure the game is stable, which honestly sounds very promising. So that wraps up our video on Jotunnslayer Hordes of Hel. The demo is still available on Steam at the time of this video, so if you want to check it out for free and download it and see if it's something you'd like, feel free to do that. What do you guys make of this game so far? Is this a game that you've never heard of? I keep trying to bring you new games. Let me know what you think in the comments below.